Hi, good afternoon. My name is Martijn Vesterepen from the Information Lab Netherlands. I am one of the managing directors and founders here, and I specialize in Snowflake and the more technical parts of our business, like setting up servers, architectures, and complex issues we might run into with our customers. So today I'm going to be talking about a few data integrations together with Snowflake. So how you can set up different tools to connect to Snowflake to load up your data. So to start the first part of your ETL or ELT process. For those who are new to Snowflake, Snowflake is a cloud data platform. In other words, well, if I oversimplify, I think you could look at it as a cloud database or a cloud data lake. So it's the location where you store your data, and whether you do that in a structured, a unstructured, or semi-structured way. That's all up to you. Snowflake supports that. It has some really great features. For us as an analytics company, it's a really great analytical database. It's fast. Has great performance. It's easy to work with, easy to connect to all the different tools that we work with. And most of all, it's very scalable. So the scalability comes in both ways, so both up and out, meaning that we can either have very complex queries running on the system with a lot of performance behind them to make sure that they run fast, or that we can have many small queries running at the same time for when we have a huge or a large number of concurrent users. One of the bigger benefits of Snowflake is that you pay per use. So you pay a really small amount for storage of your data, and that data is also stored in a compressed way. So if you look at that, then that's a really small amount and almost negligible. And the other most important part is the compute part. And there you only pay for the compute that you use. So most traditional databases, you have a machine running 24/7 to make sure that the database is always available. It runs at night during the ETL or ELT jobs, and it runs during the day to obviously supply your staff with the analytical insights they want to get from the database. With Snowflake, you don't have to run it all the time. So only when there are actual queries coming, either from your ELT process or coming from the dashboards or the analytical insights, the system needs to be running, and that can drastically reduce your total cost. So for today, I'm going to talk about data integration. So how can we connect to Snowflake, and how can we get data into Snowflake? There's been a previous webinar by one of my colleagues about Snowpipes. So I won't go into detail on that part today, but it will be focusing more on connecting Eltrix to Snowflake, on how to load in data using the bulk loader, or how to use the in-database tools, making sure that you offload the workloads of your Eltrix workflow to the Snowflake database. I will have a look at Fivetran on how to set up those connections. Just as an overview, Snowflake has many different ways to ingest data. And in some cases, you don't even have to ingest the data. You can query them from a remote location. To give you an overview, we have the ability to use Snowpipes, which is a way to get data from a stage. And a stage might be an Amazon S3 bucket, or a cloud Azure blob storage, or a Google Cloud bucket, I think is what I call there. And then you can ingest them either when they appear in the buckets or on a schedule into Snowflake automatically. No extra tooling needed there. You could even use a Apache Kafka bus and then subscribe to that, to the messages that appear on the bus. And then they end up in different topics using different Snowpipes inside Snowflake. And obviously you could use ETL tools. So I'm talking about ETL tools, which stands for extract, transform, and load. But with a cloud database and modern architecture, we actually are talking about ELT tools, which is extract, load, transform, so a different order. And the main reason why we changed that order is that in the past, when we had, let's say, relatively slow databases, you would like to transform the data before they are loaded into your data warehouse to make sure that everything is well prepared, and then the data warehouse actually only has to serve the data to the end users. But now with this new technology, with columnar data storage, in-memory databases, cloud databases that are able to scale, it makes much more sense to actually just dump the data into the database and then transform the data as soon as in the database using the compute power that you have inside the database, instead of using an external tool like your Informatica or an ETL tool to transform that first. So you're actually leveraging all the power of cloud instance there. So let's have a look at Eltrix. I hope it will cooperate with me, because I had some small issues before earlier today where Eltrix was not working really well together with me. Let's go for this one. So for those who are unfamiliar with Eltrix, Eltrix is a analytics tool that allows you to ingest data from an unbelievable amount of different data sources, whether they be flat files, database connections over ODBC, or whether that's APIs, for instance, the Facebook API or Twitter API, or basically any custom API you might have. Eltrix will be able to connect with it using their download tool. So we have an unlimited amount of data ingest options, and Eltrix has a special partnership with Snowflake, so they're well aligned on each other, so that the tools within Eltrix work well with Snowflake. And one of those tools that I'm going to be showing you is the bulk loader. So what I've done is I set up a really basic workflow. So I'm ingesting a small Excel sheet. For those familiar with Tableau, you might see that this is the Tableau Superstore data set. There's a bunch of columns, and you'll see the first 100 records here. And I would just like to connect them to Snowflake so that I can write them out there. So I'm going to search for Snowflake, and you can see that we have a bulk connector available here, as well as an ODBC connector. So what's the main difference when you're uploading your data using Eltrix to Snowflake? Is that it depends on how the data is being written into the database. If you look at ODBC, it's going to be writing the data line by line into the database. So if you have a small data set, that's perfectly fine. It will just send a bunch of insert into commands, or insert or update commands into the database. But you can imagine if you're repeating the same task over and over again, especially for large data sets, then that will not perform very well. So that's why they have the bulk loader. That's the one I'm going to be using now. So I see I already have a Snowflake demo environment set up. And I can select a AWS S3 bucket here to temporarily upload my data into the S3 bucket. And then instead of doing an insert into Snowflake for each individual line, there will be a copy into command at the end of the bulk loader, and that will just copy the CSV file in the staging directory. So the Amazon S3 is my staging directory, directly into Snowflake. Because I was having some issues with my Eltrix designer earlier today, I'm using quite an old version at this moment. So you'll see that we only have the Amazon S3 connection available for stages. Newer versions also allow you to use the internal stage inside Snowflake, so that you can directly upload to the internal Snowflake stage, which is basically just a file storage where it stores the data in a CSV or a JSON format. And then at the end of the bulk load, it will automatically do a copy into command from the file, and will upload huge amounts of enormously sized CSV files really quickly compared to what you see with the line-by-line option of the insert into commands. In some cases, you might even see a 1,000-fold speed increase. So highly recommend using that option there. For now, I'm going to skip over this. Once you have your data in Snowflake, you might also want to leverage the power of Snowflake to do all your computational tasks that you want to execute on that data. Normally, Eltrix is built for local processing in your local designer, or when you upload your workflow to an Eltrix server, you can process the data on your server, which means that the data gets downloaded into either designer or Eltrix server for processing. But they also offer the ability to use the in-database tools. And the in-database tools can be found in the top ribbon. And there you see that we have different options to connect to my data. So I can connect to a in-database data source, which sets up a connection to my Snowflake environment. I can then do a couple of manipulations. I can do pretty much anything you would like to do with SQL. I can do joins, I can do filtering, I can do selects, I can write functions. And I also have the ability to stream data in from my local workflow or stream data out back into my local workflow after the in-database processing has happened. And with these tools, I can make sure that if I run my workflow, the workflow is not run locally on my local designer instance, so on my local laptop or on the Eltrix server, but it is executed as commands directly on the Snowflake environment, which means that we can then use the power of the Snowflake environment and the scalability that's available there. That has a couple of benefits. First, I don't have to download all the data to my local laptop, so it saves you in bandwidth on your network. It also saves you a lot of time that you don't have to do the download. And it gives you much greater compute resources available than I would have on my local laptop or server to actually process that data. As I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, Snowflake is a pay-per-use database. So this means that you only pay for Snowflake when the compute instance is actually running. So if you would run your Eltrix workflow and you're processing the data, you would only pay for the instance inside Snowflake that's active at that moment. So that's the warehouse in Snowflake. And as soon as your workflow stops, your billing will also stop, because then the warehouse is auto-suspended. This is specifically a use case that I can recommend if you're using big data, so millions or billions of records, gigabytes or terabytes of data, where you can easily build your workflow in the easy-to-use drag-and-drop interface from Eltrix, and then use all the processing capabilities that you have inside Snowflake. So those 2 points I wanted to highlight in this webinar. If you want to know more about Eltrix combined with Snowflake, I highly recommend visiting the website. Let me see if we can show you. Here it is. So that's at eltrix.com, and there you have some extra background information on the Snowflake Alliance. So why are they better? What do they do? How does it help you as a customer? You can find the solution brief here, but they also have a starter kit available. So if you're already a Eltrix user, you can sign up on this page. My colleague will share the links, I believe, in the chat. Quickly check that. I see she already has. Thank you, Sophie. So in this starter kit, you'll get familiar with how to set up Snowflake, how to connect it to Eltrix, build those first insights, use the in-database tools, and use all the capabilities of the combined platform. So I highly recommend downloading this. So next up, what I would like to show you is a Fivetran. And Fivetran is of sorts. Let me just put up the website, that'll be easier. ETL tool, but in fact, it's actually an ELT tool. So it allows you to extract data, load it into Snowflake, and then when it's in Snowflake, you can use transformations on top of that to change your data into the right shape or format for further analysis. So that's ELT, and you can find them at fivetran.com. So what I would like to show you is how easy it is to set up a connection. So what I've done is I've logged into my Fivetran instance. What I need to do first is set up a destination. So this is a location where I'm going to be storing my my data. So in this case, this is going to be the endpoint. So that's going to be Snowflake. So I'll call this Snowflake webinar. Add the destination. And as this is all cloud-based, you can do everything inside your browser. So there's no local installation necessary. So you can see there's a big list of data destinations that I can select. So we have Snowflake. Earlier this week, I've set up a SQL server that was on premise using a SSH tunnel. So all sorts of different options available, but for now, let's stick to Snowflake. I'll select next. And what I need to do is insert my Snowflake account, so, which I can really do here. til.bi, so we need to make sure that it doesn't contain that. I need a Fivetran user, a Fivetran database. Then I can select whether I want a key pair or a password. And then I can insert a password and select the role I would like to use. I can define the data processing location. So in this case, I'm going to select EU and which cloud provider I would like to use. So specifically, the data processing location is important with regards to the GDPR. I can define my time zone. So that's going to be Europe. I guess you're all in London, but I'm in Amsterdam, so Central European time should work for me. And then on the right side, you can see what you want to do. So of what you need to do inside Snowflake to make this work. So you need to define a Snowflake warehouse type. So how large should it be? Should it be small, an extra small, or large? And then they provide you with a ready-to-go script that you can just execute inside Snowflake. So I can copy-paste that into my Snowflake environment. Let's see, let's do this one. And so I'm not going to show you because otherwise I need to show you the password as well. And then I need to just run all the queries. And basically what this does, as soon as you execute this script inside Snowflake, it sets all the right roles, all the right users, sets up your warehouse, it sets up the right roles and uses the right roles to create a database for you for the data to load into. And basically then everything is fully set up. So as you can see in the default script, it's created a Fivetran user. It's loading data into a Fivetran database. So let's call that Fivetran database. And I need to supply a password, which is something like this. We can leave the role empty and we can just select save and test. And then hopefully everything should be working. And that's, I think, always quite a challenge when you're demoing things, if the connections actually work or if you made a stupid mistake. But I'm pretty sure this should work. I think that maybe the user already existed and the password might be wrong. Yeah, I think my password, because I practiced the demo before, I think it's giving me some problems with the user. So let me fix that. Okay. Okay, I should have recreated the user. You should be able to log on. So same screen, save and test. So what this does, this sets up my endpoint. So this is where we're going to be writing to from Fivetran into Snowflake. You can see all the connection tests I've passed. I can view my destination. So this is called the Snowflake warehouse. And then on the left side of my screen, you can see that I have different options available. So I can upload data. So I can also give specific people the ability to upload data like Excel sheets. I can do transformations on my data. So that means that the data will actually be transformed inside Snowflake, so using the Snowflake compute. And I have connectors. And I think that's the beauty of Fivetran. They have loads of connectors available for you, and they differ from all sorts of databases, like a Postgres database, SQL Server database. They can be on-premise. We can then either use an AppSec tunnel or SSH or reverse SSH to get through your firewalls. This can leverage to help you to get the data from on-premise into the cloud. We have marketing analytics connectors, so directly to Salesforce, a really great connector there. We have Google Analytics, Google Sheets, LinkedIn ads, YouTube analytics. So loads of data sources pre-built for you there. So nothing to maintain, nothing to support. It's all completely pre-built for you. And all you need to do is log in and define the data that you would like to extract from these sources. And as you can see, they have tons of them in all different areas. Working for finance with Workday, Jira. You can get Asana data, Oxero. So as an example, let's set up a Google Analytics connector. I'm going to call this, my schema is going to be called Google Analytics. It's going to ask me to authorize. Yeah, I think that's quite okay. So I can define how many historical data I would like to fetch. So let's leave it at 12 months for now. I can define if I want to synchronize all my accounts. So one login can have multiple Google Analytics accounts. So in this case, I probably just want the information lab one. Because that's the only one I have access to. And let's use website data. And that's basically all I need to do. So save and test. Then I need to define my reports. Sorry, forgot that one. So let's call this test. So destination table. I can use a pre-built report or use a custom report. Let's look at my browser and operating system overview. With advanced options, I can define extra segments or filters. Can select OK. I can have multiple reports synced in the same connector if I want. Save and test, and that should be fine. So Fivetran uses a payment model which is defined as monthly active rows. So this means that you pay for the rows in your tables that are synchronized between source and destination. So in our case, Google Analytics and Snowflake. And we have a positive connection. So we only pay for the records that are active inside that in the current billing month. The initial sync is free. So if I need to load, let's say 100 million records of historical data, you don't pay for that. But if I then have 1 million changed rows or inserted rows in that specific month, then my monthly active rows will be 1 million, and then I will be built based on that. So it's a very interesting solution if you have not a high amount of changed or inserted records every month. If they go into the hundreds of millions, then I think Fivetran is still very interesting, but it might be good to look at the payment model. But especially if you look at marketing data or some of the financial data, it's a really cheap and fast and easy to use way to set up a connection to a API. So that might be Xero, or in our case, we could connect to Salesforce. And then if we want to get that data into Snowflake, then all we have to do is set up a connection. So what I can do is set up my initial sync. So this will start fetching the data. And in the meantime, we can see the log, so we can see what it's doing. Let's see a successful connection. We had an initial connection failure earlier because we didn't define the reports. I can look at the schema and what tables I'm generating, and I can select the setup. And depending on the type of account you have with Fivetran, you can either do that by day or every few hours or every few minutes to refresh your data. And it will also give you a notification if the synchronization failed, so that you can action based on that to see what's wrong with it. I don't think this was a huge amount of data, but it takes a couple of minutes to synchronize. After this is done, my data will end up in Snowflake, and I can start using it. So that means that I can either do the transformation from Fivetran using the transformation option, and that can either be by writing SQL scripts or triggering data. Or I can just type this into the Snowflake console or use a tool like Data Build tool, which we might cover in one of the other webinars. For now, this is all I wanted to show you. I hope you've seen the power of Eltrix and the ease of use, that you can just drag and drop your workflow, and that you have the ability to bulk load your data into Snowflake and use the in-database tools to make sure that the data processing doesn't happen locally, but it happens inside the Snowflake environment. And I hope you've also seen that Fivetran is really easy to set up. It has a really interesting pricing model where you only pay for the changed records. And it has a ton of connectors for already that are already pre-built for hundreds of different cloud sources. So very easy to get started there. Thank you for your time and your attention. If you have any questions, you can reach me by email on martijn.vesterepen@theinformationlab.nl, or if you want to make it easier, just do info@theinformationlab.nl, and I'm happy to answer any questions. For now, I'll stop the webinar, and thank you.